I'll just wait for an introduction first before I start speaking.
Well, we want to welcome Tony. We know him quite well. He's a good speaker, and we're interested in what Tony's got to say. So welcome everybody, welcome Tony, and go to it, mate.
Hey. Thank you, Danny. Tonight's talk is a continuation on from last month, which was a study in consciousness. This is one of the books that we've got in our library, very old version thereof, not like the one that Diane and Jane have got.
So I've got a second one like that.
So Jane actually did the introduction last month.
She did.
Are we proceeding to chapter 1, are we?
We are, yes. That's what I was told.
That's all I want to know, thank you.
Chapter 1 was relatively short by comparison to chapter 2. I don't know who's going to do that one, but the trouble I had with chapter 1, I don't envy them. I read the chapter something like about 20 or 30 times to try to understand what I was reading, and I did have some difficulty. Not necessarily because it's difficult as such, but because the concept of atom is a little bit different to the concept of atom that I'm used to. Being someone who's always loved science, that kind of thing, the concept is a little bit different because you're taking it from a little bit of a different angle. There's a lot of similarities, but I didn't really start to understand those similarities until about the 15th, 20th reading. So I'll go with that. Now there's a lot of typing here, which is quotes from the original text, so you'll have to forgive me for that. I noticed that Jane had a great summary there by the looks of it. She's got beautiful coloured diagrams and the like, and I just got little black and white nothing. So I'm feeling very envious of Jane over here at the moment. So,
Borrow hers.
I was thinking of having lended hers. But anyway, my chapter is called The Preparation of the Field. Now, the last sentence of the chapter best summarises the entire chapter. Now it states, this work of the third logos is usually spoken of as the first life wave. Now, in this sentence is encapsulated the entire meaning of the chapter. Look at all the pretty coloured pictures, it's lovely, isn't it?
Oh, I think that's an A+ performance.
What's the
Third logos, first life wave. First logos, second life wave.
Oh, where did you get all these?
Well, that's good.
Oh, to get my smiley stamp out for it.
Damn.
Can you come in?
I'll have to show you that one later. And with the third logos, performs the task of awakening the universe from its slumber and bringing it back to life by gathering together all of matter from infinite space on every side to build the universe from materials that are unrecognisable as such by us. The duty of the third logos is to construct the vessels by which the divine spark will be able to enter every living atom. Now, in the introduction, which was presented to us last meeting by Jane, it is noted that the third logos begins the external work of manifestation, the shaping of the objective universe, and that he puts forth his life into matter to fashion it into the materials fitted for the building of the vehicles which the monads need for their evolution. And so to this first chapter, which explains how this is achieved. Any comments? Does it make sense?
Mm.
Okay. To sub-chapter 1, the formation of the atom. I'd have to spend another week on this, Jane. No offence. It looks great, and all the colours.
Yeah.
We start with the formation of the atom. Now I'm here reminded of a child's playpen with heaps of inanimate toys sitting motionless in the pen. When the child is introduced into the playpen, he or she breathes life into the lifeless toys by playing with them. And I guess it's a way for me to kind of think of the way that the third logos sits within the motionless universe, and then brings towards him all the matter which is unrecognisable to us to him. Now he's surrounded by a motionless, inanimate universe, a universe that is in what is termed a stable equilibrium. Now, according to Annie Besant, this equilibrium is due to the balancing of the three qualities of matter: inertia, mobility, and rhythm, which are balanced together in a closed circle, virgin, like a celestial Virgin Mary, that becomes the mother by the action of the third logos. So the actions or breath of the third logos is the breaking of that closed circle, throwing the qualities out of stable into unstable equilibrium. Now personally, I never understood how you could have an unstable equilibrium, but that's a concept I've got to come to grips with.
It's called quantum science.
But yeah, this puts the matter into continual motion in relation to each other. So there are three stages by which atoms are formed. Firstly, by fixing the limit of vibration of the ensouling life, the life of the logos in the atom. Now this is referred to as the divine measure, which is also known as tanmatra. Tanmatra? Tanmatra. The measure of that being the divine spirit. Secondly, marking out the lines to determine the atom's shape, axis of growth, and angular relation of these. Now this determines the form of the corresponding cosmic atom, known as the tattva. Thirdly, measure of vibration and angular relation is set in the first two stages. The form and size of the surface or wall of the atom is determined. Thus, in every atom, we have the measure of its ensouling life, its axis of growth, and its enclosing surface or wall. So 5 different kinds of atoms are created by the third logos, with 5 different measures, which implies 5 different vibrations. In turn, each kind forms the basic material of a plane. So what does it mean? Anyone?
Yeah.
On one sense, because the word atom, we have our mental picture of the little ball with the balls rolling around it. It's not that sort of atom, as you said at the beginning, but probably using atom as it originally meant in the Greek, which was a single unit. And I think that's part of the concept, but even then at that level, it's still not physical. It's that the makeup of the universe is made up of single units of matter of some sort. When we get down to the physical plane, that matter becomes solidified and we can grasp it. But I mean, even quantum physics says that when you get to a certain point with matter, it's all vibration and it disappears anyway.
Yeah.
And I think things like quantum physics helps our mind grasp something of what this is about too, because it's showing that it isn't a solid universe, that there are dimensions within it. And the planes, the 5 make up the 5 levels of the material world, or the world that we're going to exist in. That they're, what was the word I was going to say there? They're different rates of vibration. and they appear solid, but they're not. And we use this word atom just to try and get the concept of measurement, I think, more than anything else, don't we?
And I think what's explained in the text about the vibration being put there by the third logos is very much that. It's talking about creating those three different aspects of it. When we're talking about things like the blank, anyway, I have
I'm still having trouble getting over the third logos.
Particles.
Why is it the third logos and what is a logos?
Well, the word
That was my talk.
that was
Can
James'
you-
talk last
Can
week.
you recap a little bit?
I actually have a very short summary.
Oh, can you enlighten me?
The first logos
Yeah.
is the absolute big, the one,
All right, yeah,
the one,
gotcha.
right? So the first logos became self-conscious,
Mhm.
and that formed the second logos because there was a self and not self.
It reminds
So it's
me.
the first and the second logos.
Yeah.
As soon as you have a duality, there's automatically a trinity, because if you have one and two, there's a relationship between them, which
relationship,
becomes
yeah.
the third logos. The
Ah,
third
yeah.
logos is always activity because it's a relationship.
The relationship.
So there's a self, not self, and then the activity of the relationship between the two, and the
Ah, so that's the
activity
third logo.
is what begins the manifestation.
Holy Trinity.
And the word logos,
As I said.
I think it's Greek and it means word.
Yes.
They used to.
It does.
Logos
Yes.
means
The
word.
word,
Yes,
yeah.
it does.
And you have that statement, say, from the biblical sense of in the beginning was the word and the word was
And that was going to be my talk.
Yeah.
Because I can't.
Yeah.
So
Stuart,
it's this
that's right.
concept at the beginning there's a vibration, that's the activity, that's the third logos bringing
Yes.
this.
The logos.
But can I say something like
It's the
there's a
word.
symmetry, like it's called synchronicity, like when two things like a partnership with each other, like it's kind of like they're both synchronized, like the twin syndrome.
There's
Yeah,
also, when you quoted
quite
from Brian Cox last time, there's that point where he says that the universe is going from order to disorder,
Yes.
which at first you think, oh, that doesn't sound quite right, but actually from the point of view of the logos, that's what's happening, isn't it? It's
Yes.
going from equilibrium.
Well, if it's alive, it's got to be in activity,
Yes.
hasn't it?
And when it's in activity,
Yeah.
there's no, it's chaos. It's
Yeah,
Yes,
and that's what they're
that's
saying by the
Yeah.
unequal equilibrium,
Yes.
in that the generation of the vibrations through the atoms is what creates the life force within them, and that in turn has those other three parts of the where is it, the part yeah, those three measures, the vibration, is that right? You know which parts I'm talking about?
yeah, yes,
Yeah, I can't find it, but the axis and that. The measure of a consoling life, its axis of growth and its enclosing surface, was that wrong?
yes.
Anyway,
It creates turbulence.
it does,
Yeah.
and that turbulence is the thing that makes it also
Yeah, the activity
yeah.
within itself.
unequal, but that in itself is what creates, gets the life moving and all that kind of stuff. When the universe is together as the virgin universe, like as I say there, before the logos becomes involved, that's when you're talking about it being a closed circle and being equilibrium, a stable equilibrium when nothing's happening and there's nothing to be seen of that matter and the like. When life is poured into those atoms, that's when you have the unequal equilibrium, if you want to call it that.
So is this logos, is that like a sentient
You
thing?
see?
Like a sentient, like if logos is the mind, like is that like a sentient thing? Like if you're talking in terms of Earth, like could that kind of be like Gaia?
What-
Like in or nature things.
Pussy.
When I read it, I looked at it as I said, as like a child in a toy box, because that was the only way that my mind could think about it.
Yeah.
In a playpen, and so I personified it. And I'm sure there is no guy there doing that type of thing.
As
That's a
human beings, we
consciousness.
tend to personify. That's why I say the Greek gods.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
personified as human beings,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in reality, they're forces.
Yeah,
Just like
But we
like
can only
cerebral
understand
balls.
by personifying.
by personifying. And I think with aspects like the logos, there's no being as in human being, but never is a state of being.
State of being, yeah. So, anyway, I'll go on to
Yeah.
sub-chapter 2, which
Interesting.
is spirit matter. Now, the method of the formation of atoms of successive planes is what this part is about. Now, the Malaprachiti,
Mullaprakriti.
No. Get down.
Yeah. The root of matter exists around the matter of space, around each system. Now, each system has its own special matter growing out of it. The Logos ensouls it with his own life, and this life within this subtle matter is the Atma, the self, the spirit in every particle. Now, the energy of the Logos, known as Thohat, digs holes in space. This is according to
That's a Blavatsky
Blavatsky.
statement. Yeah.
forming innumerable vortices shaped by the divine energy and the axes of growth, and each shelled with the matter of space. Atma in a shell of Malaprachiti, spirit in a shell of matter, the atoms of the Adai, or highest plane, the first. Now, some of these atoms remain as atoms, whilst others become part of molecules, and yet others become part of ever more complex forms of molecules until 6 subplanes below the atomic are formed. Now, the forming of the atoms of the second plane then begins when some of the atoms of the Adai, or first, plane draw around themselves a shell of combinations of their own lowest subplane. The spirit plus its original shell of cosmic matter, Malaprachiti, or the atom of the first plane, is the spirit of the second plane and permeates the new shell, formed out of the lowest grade combinations of itself. These shells, thus ensouled, are the atoms of the Anapadaka,
Anapadaka.
or second plane. So then the remaining 6 subplanes are brought into being by ever more complicated aggregations. That is, the atoms of the second plane are encapsulated as the spirit within these shells, and so on. The physical is the wall of the 6th shell and is the only part regarded as physical. All inner shell sheaths are regarded as spirit. So we are made up of spirit and matter at the atomic level. So what they were saying is that in each progressive atom, Jane's got a lovely coloured one of these, so I've only got little black and white things, and not very good ones either. But if you'd like to have a look at them.
Actually, I've got the book here, so I'll put that.
So where did you get all this information from?
Sorry,
So what book did you get all this stuff from?
this is from the book that we're studying called A Study in Consciousness by
Oh,
Penny
yeah.
Besant.
Right,
Um, And what was the thought? Yeah, with regards to the atoms and how they move down through the different planes and the like, in the first, the spirit is within the shell, and the outer shell is the atom wall, or the physical atom wall, in an etheric level because they're beyond whatever. And as you get further along to the second shell, to the second plane, you have all that was encapsulated in the first one, in the first atom of the first plane, is now the centre, if you like, of the second atom, and the outer wall of that one is then the physical atom. And then when you go into the third one, again, it's taking up more shells. So when you get down to the bottom, there's actually 6 shells by the time you get to the bottom, all encapsulating the one before it.
So where's the nucleus in the first one?
It is the spirit matter of the divine.
Full of Prakriti.
Yes.
So what do I call electrons then?
Well, they're all sort of like an ordinary biological
Yeah,
cell.
sorry.
Yeah.
But even from the biological sense, which is going from the other way up, you still have the fact that you have the vibrations make up the...
And you have shells and...
Yes, that make up the atoms, and the atoms make up molecules, and the molecules make up chemicals, and the chemicals make up a physical form. So
Which is what the water is.
And when you think of shells as well,
Yes.
that's where, if you're thinking of the physical form, you are thinking of things like protons and neutrons and electrons, because they are part of the shells.
Yes, so how are we to understand all this in an esoteric sort? Did you pass it on? In an esoteric sort of way, or in a scientific way?
Well, this is pre-scientific. Like, this is all...
Yeah, it's...
even the lowest atom that they're talking about is still not the physical atom that we study in science. So this is even before.
Yes,
so it's esoteric.
It's esoteric.
It's esoteric.
Yeah.
But it does
you
have
sort of
its...
get grasp a concept of it by using the physical, the scientific.
As above, so below.
But it's like your allegory of the boy and the toy pen. It's always an allegory.
Yeah.
Yes.
But something in our mind can sort of put a
latch onto,
structure onto it.
Yeah.
Did you say allegory then, Diane?
Yes.
Right. I was just trying to put that into the similar sort of pattern, because that's the only way it can be described. And there are some there's some signs there that this is very ancient. I know that, but Aristotle used a similar pattern, and the Greeks also spoke of something that's so incredibly similar. But I'm talking about the pre-Socratic Greeks, not from Socrates onwards, but the early Greeks. It's remarkably similar, and I found this intensely exciting.
Yes.
Because they're talking about it's just I'll have to bring my little bit on that next time as a study group, because I'm seeing the link that came out of the Indus Valley, which then probably somehow moved across into Egypt and then into came across from there into the Greek pathway, because this is just so much earlier.
Yes. And this is one of the interesting things about this sort of teaching. It's not Blavatsky's ideas, it's what she's garnered.
Yes.
She's gathered from the teachings, which are reflected out in the world in all the cultures at different times. And some cultures have grasped it in a more complex way than others, like the Greeks, those early Greeks sort of dived into it and came up with this whole new philosophical bent, whereas other cultures made it more simplistic and maybe turned them into gods and forces. But the ancient wisdom is the ancient wisdom.
Oh, the linkages are what fascinates me.
But is there like a difference in like the scientific concept of it to like mysticism? Like, for example, there's a good documentary called The Elegant Universe that talks about like the ground unified theorem. And
yes, in one sense, up until probably about 20, 30 years ago, science was very hard on these things and just looked at the physical world.
Yeah.
But then you had all these scientists coming in, like the Fritjof Capras, etc., who started bringing in Indian philosophy into it.
Yes.
So a lot of the cutting edge scientists, and I would put Brian Cox into that,
Absolutely.
somehow grasped this other esoteric side of it.
Yes.
They still are finding ways of trying to explain it themselves, I think, but they're moving along these ways and are probably giving us us Theosophists better ways of understanding.
Yes.
Because I would say, like, if it, in the terms of science, like, if I have like the four forces, if there's a fifth force called God force or spiritual force that we haven't found out about, like maybe we can integrate with matter and maybe we can find it out one day in the future.
The whole point of saying that the Logos, that this outpouring of the Logos, isn't about a God. It's probably going more to that scientific concept of this unifying force.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not a hard physical thing.
No.
It's all interspersed with this spiritual energy.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
In one sense, light has got something to do with
Yes, yeah.
it. It's, light is the spirit, and I haven't wrapped my mind around that concept myself properly, but I think even Cox sort of brought it in a bit about light.
Yeah, he did actually. And there's,
So that's why it explains entropy, like why there's so much like good parts in the world and bad parts, like about thought, like if there's a mystical thing called thought, like why bad things happen, like if there's an earthquake or you talk about Port Arthur, like with that resonance, that psychic resonance that linger, like there must be a force that is there, like science can't explain it. They have all these things to try to explain it, but they can't really explain it.
Yes.
But it's something that's unexplainable by our terms.
And our thoughts are energies. We tend to think our thoughts are just simply going through the grey matter, but they're not. They're actually energies that are going out into the world. As are our emotions, they're energies that are going out. Leadbeater and Bessant did a book called Thought Forms, where they described the colour and shape of people's thoughts and feelings, and it's really quite sort of mind-blowing in some ways, because good thoughts have lovely colours and bad thoughts have terrible colours. And people like Kandinsky jumped on this and started the whole abstract art movement by looking at shapes in a totally different way. And in the modern times, this Japanese scientist that works with water.
yes.
Oh, Emoto?
Yes, and he's showing that our emotions and thoughts affect the shape of water.
Yeah.
That's quite amazing.
It's the radiance that comes out of a being, a person, and it's not totally physical at all. It's a mixture of the spiritual, if you want to use that word, as well as the physical. It's sort of like, to me, it's coming from all the essences that are within the physical person. So when we act or speak or whatever we do, it's not only a physical action, it's sort of combined with all these other forces that are contained within, the spiritual forces, for want of a better word, you know, with all these other words that Tony's saying, you know, because a lot of those words are new to me, you know, and I can only translate them by saying that they're a combination of spiritual forces within. But they're all operational. The way we exist is not only in a solely physical way.
Yes, and in one sense, when she talks in there about going from the RD plane down to the physical, each is a shell encasing.
Yes.
The centre of that shell is the spirit, which is that God aspect of us.
And what they're saying too is that most of that atomic shell is spirit. And it's only that small outer casing which is physical.
Physical, yes.
But we've got like a big thing in like when they do like wicked magic, like each thing has an energy, like to use natural beeswax versus a synthetic candle, or like using crystals, like that's why I figure like the structure of a crystal, like why crystal healing, like there's a scientific basis of why crystal healing works because of the structure of our like that's why with each chakra, why there's a crystal associated to that chakra, like why a person born in like Jane would know a lot about this, like why a person born under different astronomical sign, they will have like a crystal associated to it,
Yes.
like based on that kind of the crystal structure and the spiritual. It's kind of like a vessel that emanates of it.
Yes. Once upon a time, people poo-pooed crystals, but nowadays, a crystal is the basis of a laser.
Yeah.
And lasers are used for healing eyes,
That's right.
just for example.
Yeah. But I would say too that the combination of all this is a transformative process that's occurring within us. The more we learn about all this sort of thing, and if it becomes something that's significant to us, it creates a continual or transformative process within ourselves.
Yes. Now it's like the concept in Buddhism of achieving enlightenment,
Yes,
or in Hinduism,
yes.
moksha. The word Buddha simply means
To wake up.
to wake up, and it's sort of like whatever that experience is. It's about going into the light as opposed to
Yeah,
being in this darkness of the world.
and awakening,
It's awakening.
in a process of awakening.
Yes.
Yes. So it's not as obscure
No.
as you might think, but we do need to talk about it.
Well,
Yes.
we learnt about it in first and second year high school. It was state of vibration. We were taught it was Brownian motion. So everything is vibrating. So that's not new to anyone who's done science at high school.
Yeah.
Just another name, Brownian motion.
I can just imagine a couple of 100 years ago they would have classed us as heretics. They're speaking against the Catholic Church and like the mystical force of God. But like even if I go to church and talk about crystals or talk about like flower reading, like we're having a spiritualist church, I would like they would think I'm just crazy. But to any other person, it becomes a part. Like that's what interests me when I went to spiritualist church, like flower reading, like reading the energies from that. Like if it's like a partial truth in it, then it must be true.
When, say, Blavatsky and then later Besant, they wrote all these things down, at that time the comprehension of the average person for it was non-existent, basically. It's amazing how much the world has changed in 100 years, because even though we really don't understand what quantum physics really means, because we're not scientists, nevertheless there's certain principles at work, and when we now see pictures of the galaxies or pictures of a cell, something I was seeing on TV that they had the little cell they were doing
In vitro.
in vitro, yes, and it's amazing. We can comprehend these ideas far better than the people of 100 years ago.
Well, for a start, you wouldn't have known what you're looking at, would you?
No.
You saw a cell being injected with the egg, the nucleus
sperm,
of
yes.
another egg.
Well, you didn't understand
You're
that
going, well, what the heck? Or a cell? What are they doing?
Yes.
What is that?
100 years ago they didn't understand that the ova were the little single-celled things inside us.
Yeah, that's right.
So I better go on a little bit
Go on,
further. Subchapter 3 is the subplanes. Now there are 7 subplanes consisting of the gaseous, liquid, solid, the 3 etheric subplanes or states of matter, and the true atomic. The diagram handed out displays the relations that exist between the planes by their intermingling. Life can pass from plane to plane by the short path rather than through the 6 molecular subplanes. Life streams from the monad follow this atomic path to the physical plane. So they don't have to go through every single aspect of every single of those, 49 squares. It doesn't have to go through all of those. It can come down quickly if it so wishes. Now, a physical atom, looking at it as a whole, we see a vortex of life, the life, the third logos, whirling with inconceivable rapidity. But at the limiting surface of this whirling vortex are the spirali, whirling currents, each at right angles to the one within it and the one within it. These whirling currents are made by the life of the monad, not by the life of the third logos, and are not present at the early stage we are considering. Now, such is supposed to occur one in each round and is completed by the 4th round. So a lot of these things, the introduction of the monad into the atom doesn't occur until later on, not at this stage. So then subchapter 4, which is the last of the chapters or subchapters in this, is the 5 planes. Now the measure by which the third logos limits the atom will cause the matter of the various planes to react differently to the impulse of consciousness. Now each atom from each plane with its own measure has its own vibration and thus its own power of response, giving it a specific character. Numberless possibilities of response to the 3 aspects of consciousness lie within each atom, and such possibilities within the atom will be brought out of the atom as powers in the course of evolution. However, the atom's response is determined by the original action of the triple self and on the measure imposed by the third logos. This capacity is stamped on matter by the third logos and is ever maintained in matter by his life enfolded in the atom. Thus is formed the 5-fold field of evolution in which consciousness is to develop.
One of the interesting things in that is that the third logos imparts an aspect of itself into it, and it can be different each time. And I think this is part of when Blavatsky says there's no beginning or end, because though these worlds come and go, and each time a world comes, it has a slightly different resonance.
And that, I think, is what is being said when the third logos changes the vibration of the particular atom so that it would have a different characteristic.
Yes.
And that there are, I think I said 5 basic, yeah, I think it's about 5 basic ones, which then have several different ways of doing something else and several different ways of doing something else, and by the time you add them all up, it's what they call numberless.
Yes.
You couldn't describe the number of combinations that are possible by all those different combinations.
Yes,
It is sort of
infinitesimal.
mind-boggling in a way, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah,
and even after 20 or so readings, I still couldn't understand it properly. Maybe that's because I'm a bit of a simpleton in that regards.
Oh, no, it's difficult.
But,
Now, I've been listening to some of these concepts for years, and every time I hear them, I get another Another harm moment. Or,
Yes.
because I've read something else and
Yeah.
it adds to it all the time.
Yes.
And I'm quite sure that at our human level we'll never understand it. Because it's like an ant trying to understand what a human being is. It's just a different state of being. We're talking about something that our physical plane is the lowest
Yes, that's right.
of all this.
But it's a series of revelations, really, isn't it?
Yes.
And of course,
Yes.
what we've got to remember too is this chapter was simply leading on to the next chapter, which is about the introduction of consciousness, I think, into those particular atoms that are now being formed.
Yeah.
And, which is, again, part of the book, The Study of Consciousness.
I meant to download it and print it, but I'm out of black cartridge ink because I feel that if I read a bit beforehand, it clarifies it a bit for when the presentation comes, you know.
Yes.
But I've got the whole thing because Jane sent it over.
All right.
And I did have it printed out like last week, so I'll get a new cartridge and print it out, and I'll read it for myself because my
You need to
original
get some coloured stuff
my
like James.
original
Yeah.
plan
Yeah, I want to
Diagram.
be printed. I want to be
printed out
printed.
each month as we did it, so that in the end I'll have the whole book anyway. Yeah.
But that's the thing, like, if people could understand it, if people could, if it was like if it was a theory and like, it was out there only for smart people, how many of the layman people could understand it? Like, they have a theories, they have Nobel Prizes in science all the time, but does a layman person actually understand that? So if they had a Nobel Prize of working out like things that we can't work out in our own mind, like say for example a very spiritual person or to solve koans, like in Zen Buddhism, if I can solve like different koans that or rhetorical questions that it may take a couple of lifetimes to like understand or reply.
That's
Really?
come on to do your head in.
Yeah, so once I
But the point
yeah,
is, we all understand it
but we use our
according
ego.
to the capacity we have of understanding
Yeah,
it. You know.
but
Yeah.
that capacity is based on our
Our
like
own
IQ.
limitations, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like
It's not just our IQ, it's based on something deeper than the IQ.
Yes.
our spiritual
It's like a
intelligence.
spiritual connection, really. Yeah.
Like the cat, like I see like the history of the cat that's based on love. Like what goes at the first mind. We come to philosophy because we're based on that spiritual intelligence. We want something in our life, so it's catered to the individual.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think Elizabeth might know a lot about all this stuff because Elizabeth studied all this at university many years ago. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's something. It's something that does vary so much depending on perception and where one is at, and exactly what you were saying before. You can't. You can qualify, but you can't quantify. I suppose that's the best way of putting it. Because every human's experience is different, and there's sort of about 10 major factors in the way we absorb knowledge and understanding, and hence wisdom. And this is why wisdom is something we can't say, this is wisdom, because what wisdom is different for everybody.
Yes.
And this is the problem of the English language, so that when you get something like what you've just given us, which manages to work above the English language, it's a very good attempt to refine or to put into a different mindset, perhaps, what we're talking about, because our language can't absorb it. We don't have the words, we don't have the same words
Yes,
throughout the world
like, there's
for
some
the
TS
same
members
thing.
that complain about
It's terribly complex.
all the Sanskrit words that are in Theosophical writing. But the reality is, the Sanskrit words in themselves, like say Mula Prakriti, once you get your tongue around it, and it takes a while, but Mula Prakriti, once I've got that in my mind, I know what I'm talking about. But if I have to put that into English words, I've got to say a dozen English words. So it's a matter of our mind starting to understand what words mean
Yes.
and what they can represent in that process. I mean, we're still, Mula Prakriti fascinates me because on one hand, I can grasp that it is the very essence of all matter, not just physical matter, but the essence of what everything's made up of. And it is the Great Mother. And it's the feminine aspect of the universe.
But is there
But
like
it's we can never really understand what it is.
but is there like words that's like based on like esoterical words that are based on like different vibrations, like
Yes. One of the
in
reasons
the Eckhart
Sanskrit,
Tolle we have who.
You can't
Sanskrit is said to be is called the language of the Devas,
Yeah.
and it is said to be one of the great sacred languages because there's a mantric vibration in it,
Yes, yes.
and therefore the words can actually form shapes in our minds.
Mm.
Now, other languages are also said to be sacred. I think Sanskrit's regarded as one of the most sacred, but Latin is a sacred language.
Get up because I want to do something.
And ancient Hebrew
Sorry.
is a sacred language.
I'll get something to show you. Just keep
Yes,
going.
so that I have a tape at home somewhere, and I don't know whether it even works anymore, but it was a tape a TS member gave me of a talk he heard on the ABC radio, and it was an Irish actress being interviewed, and she was a Shakespearean actress. And in Ireland, Irish people don't do Shakespeare because it's English.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about her was, not only had she become a Shakespearean actress, but she had played the role of Richard III, I think it was.
Oh, crazy man.
And for a woman to have played the man's
Yes.
role was a big thing. And when he asked her about getting into the character, she said, the interesting thing about the Shakespearean language of the plays is that the very words themselves shape the character.
Yeah.
So when the actor is saying those words, they're magic, and they get the actor into that mindset of the crazy Richard or the
Yes.
sad Hamlet or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
And I remember at the time being quite blown away by this concept, because the Shakespearean plays, regardless of who wrote them, those plays are a pivotal aspect of the English language.
Well, did you remember seeing when Mel Gibson did the version of Hamlet that used Old English, the old Shakespearean English, and the difference between that and other versions that had been written in modern English?
Yes.
It was much better movie, not necessarily because of Mel's acting or whatever, but because of the language.
Yes.
Oh,
And like, I had other people going, what do you say? You got to listen to it. It's like a song. You just let it carry you away.
but that's
You
a
listen to it.
yeah, because that's the thing. Like in like because I know like so I've read up books on like magic about like where they do spellcraft, like they formulate their like words based on like a resonance. Like there's a thing of chaos magic where it does encapsulate that energies. Like I was just thinking when you talk about how about that Scottish play like Tori in the Trouble? There must be
The Scottish play.
yeah, there must be a thing about passage because they were saying that's a part of the occult, and that like their whole if it's more of like a placebo effect or more like if you think it's going to happen then it might happen, but if there's a magical thing in it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Isn't
well,
it supposed to be
the other thing too about
Om's
the-
supposed to be a magical resonating sound,
Yeah.
spiritual?
Yeah.
Who
And
is?
the other interesting thing about
Om
Shakespearean
and who?
plays
Who?
is
You mentioned who before?
that Shakespearean actors eventually have a voice that is quite powerful. And I can, quite often on TV when I'm listening to different actors, I can pick and say, yeah, that one's a Shakespearean actor.
Patrick
because they-
Stewart.
Yeah.
Patrick Stewart.
Patrick
yes.
Yeah.
Doc,
Oh, Richard Burton.
Star Trek.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the-
I brought that
He
up
did,
because I wanted
he
to
did
see
plays now?
yes, I
Sorry?
think-
He did plays now, Patrick Stewart? Yeah, I know he did.
Oh, right.
He was a very
And,
good
um,
Shakespearean actor.
And from
Yeah.
one
Before he was
language to
a
another,
Star
you
Trek,
never
like
literally
when you heard him on Star Trek,
translate
you knew
a
he
word
was
I
Shakespearean.
can tell you the Star Trek
into another
version
language.
of
You know,
yeah,
like
in another
Hamlet.
language.
Yes.
on the
That's
Star
why
Trek
you said
version of
that
plays.
in Sanskrit,
I think we've got to.
sometimes you
cut
have to
now.
use
Go to an
half a
eat.
dozen English
Yeah,
words
so
Yeah.
it
to
does, yeah.
explain one
I'd
word
like to,
in another
I'd like to
language.
thank you, Tony,
or in
for your
Sanskrit.
words of wisdom, and it was very good. Applause out.
Got all our minds going.
I've only got